Anime is special as a means of storytelling because it's a place where anybody can go to find a story that seems to have been written specifically for them. Do you want to watch a 3rd century Chinese warlord get reincarnated into modern day Japan and use his military genius to help a struggling pop star achieve fame? We've got that. Do you want to watch a world of anthropomorphic animals who are also theater kids fight off or become part of the Yakuza while vying for sexual attention from a rabbit? We've got that. Do you want to watch a show featuring a group of teenage girls who are also soldiers, who are also witches, who are also furries, who are also airplanes, who are also MP3 players, deal with becoming adults while singing with aliens in solar punk World War II? We've got that. But we don't want those things, do we? Not really. What we want is to grow a field of flowers that we thought we would never see again. We want to enjoy shaved ice so fine that the heat of a finger can melt it. We want someone to wake us up early to watch a sunrise. We want to miss our old friends and cherish our new ones, and we want fools to praise us for the magic we've done. And now we've got that. Frieren Beyond Journey's End is something special. It's the kind of show that you should see airing and think that you are lucky to live in this time. Technological miracles, record low infant mortality, mRNA vaccines, no. You live in a time when the elf walks the screen, and when you die, and you are now acutely aware that you will look back on the hours you spent watching this trio of dorks and think, yeah, that was pretty good. But here's the thing. Everyone knows that Frieren is pretty good. I typed Frieren essay into the search bar and got 61 results before it started recommending me videos on how to play blackjack and build my own kiln. I counted. I need to tell you that Frieren is good in the same way that I need to tell you that bringing a guitar to a party is gauche. Some people need to hear it, but it's not new information, and there are already plenty of people out there who will tell you the same thing. Here are the numbers you care about. It is the closest I have ever seen to a 10 out of 10 show, and I would recommend it to pretty much anybody. It's got good character writing, pacing, an intriguing world, a great magic system, some of the best heckin' fight scenes this side of Attack on Titan, beautiful art and animation, top-tier voice acting. It made me cry twice on a rewatch, and honestly, what else are you even looking for? Boobs? There are no boobs in this. So for this video, I'm just going to take it for granted that you know that Frieren is the best anime of the last quarter century and focus on something a little different. See this score here? 9.5 out of 10, highest score I have ever given anything? Well, today I thought we could dive deep into the murky trenches of that 0.5 out of 10 and discuss exactly where Frieren falls short of perfection and how far of a fall that is. So grab your nitpick and get ready to talk about the absolute worst of the absolute best. Here we go. あなたは風のように目を閉じてはゆくれ何を思っているんだろうか It's very difficult to write a story that takes place over a long time and actually make it feel like time has passed. This is something that Frieren does exceptionally well, especially when it comes to its characters. Frieren herself feels like someone who walked with dinosaurs and dabbled in genocide before majoring in botany and becoming a vagrant. The two distinct periods of Fern's life feel connected but still different. She starts the series as just a little guy being traded away to a stranger by Heiter and then ends up being a proper woman in her own right, clearly influenced by Frieren without becoming the same person. Stark's personal history and his canonically small penis are evident in everything that he does, allowing for some deep character moments while still letting him serve as a great comic relief character. Everything about this main trio and the other people that they occasionally osmose along the way makes you feel like you want to be in this party. It makes you think that you want to drink with Stark and his canonically small penis around the fire, get scolded by Fern for doing your Sudoku wrong, and ignored by Frieren because she found a cool new bug that she's going to be looking at for the next 10 years. They're also charming and real and watchable, and one of them has to be the worst, so pick up your buzzers and get ready for Who Should Die? And the worst character in Frieren is... Buzz. X-Point? Yeah, who is Lernen? A very good question. Who the heck is Lernen, and why does he wait until the second half of episode 28 to try to matter? Lernen's plot is the only part of Frieren's first season that I would say is straight up bad. Spoilers, I guess, but it doesn't really matter. This guy decides at the end of the last episode of the season that he is going to leave his mark on history by being the guy who killed John Frieren. And that's cool. Everything about Lernen's story is cool. One of the new apprentices This is a Frieren's Grand Master wanting desperately to fight against time and prove that the work that Zarya put into him wouldn't be forgotten, deciding as an old man that the only way he can achieve that goal is by ending the life of someone better than him. That is a whole-ass protagonist's worth of motivation, and it winds up feeling rushed and fizzling out because the season just tries to throw him in at the end and hope that we care. He's got so much potential as a character that I almost hope we get one of those ReZero type spin-off novels about him. But in practice, he just comes off as a whining child complaining that their upperclassman is good-looking and smart and good at sports, and it's not fair because I am just as good of an academic team captain as Luke was. There's another set of characters that I have a gripe with too, and they're somewhat related to Lernin, literally speaking. The big arc of Frieren's second core is a tournament, and that means that we're going to get a dump truck of new characters poured on our heads. Some of them are meant to stick with us, some are meant to be set dressing. And even in a video that is meant to pick over all of the tiniest complaints that I have, I am not going to sink so low as to complain that Bly and Tone aren't fleshed out characters. But when you're introducing a bunch of little guys all at once, most of whom will never be seen again after this arc, it is vital for a series to do everything that it can to keep the viewer from confusing them with each other. Little visual cues are important. We don't know Dunst, Scarf, Bly, and Tone. We know the guy with the mustache, the butler, the bald guy, and the other one. Era and Adel are the same woman. Big, poofy brown hair, tired-looking brown eyes, same nose, same mouth. They're even both primarily wearing white outfits, aside from Era's cloak. This is the visual equivalent of a novel naming two characters Eren and Erika. Yeah, the viewer can get used to it over time and keep the characters straight if they're both on screen and important and distinct in other areas, but we shouldn't have to. You can make these people look like anything, and if they look this similar, there needs to be a reason for it, otherwise it's a source of needless confusion for the audience. Case in point, I've been swapping their faces this entire time. But when it comes to characters, there is one group that needs to be discussed above all others. Not because they are currently being portrayed poorly, but because they have the potential to go very wrong, and that's... Mabuta wahira iteita anata no me wabidoro sukoshi dake haru no nioi gashita. Full song cover available for free on Patreon, by the way. Frieren's depiction of demons is a magnet for a lot of criticism in the series, and I can see where that's coming from. Normally, when a show depicts an entire race of sentient beings as inherently evil monsters who live only to kill and speak only to deceive, that's a bad thing. It's the same kind of rhetoric that Ranking of Kings gets in trouble for when it's talking about the Japanese occupation of Korea. I mean the Homen occupation of the Homen helping of Yakuza. Choosing to make an entire race inherently evil has become a huge taboo in modern fantasy, both because it is considered bad writing and because it is a very slippery slope toward accidentally falling into xenophobia and cultural stereotypes that are buried deep in the roots of the genre. And that's exactly what makes it so interesting that Frieren decides to do it. Frieren has no trouble with character writing. It could have easily looked to its villains and written deep, complicated, nuanced characters that the audience would find themselves sympathizing with or even rooting for at different times. And not only does it not do that, it gives us a protagonist who is literally genocidal. It's like it's just daring the leftist in me to say something, and while that leftist is sitting there with his notebook and paying rapt attention ready to compose a zinger of a tweet at any moment, he has not done that yet. Would Frieren be better if its main antagonists were more complicated and sympathetic? It's possible, but that story would look so different to the Frieren that we have today that it's hard to say. Personally, I feel like Frieren is coming out at a very good time for stories that have simple villains. There's a reason things like Solo Leveling are so popular. The forces that control the lives of normal people are so large and overbearing that it feels like we can't do anything about them. They are webs of complicated and interconnected systems, all of which are made up of people, each of whom is exactly as complicated and intricate as the webs they make up. And those webs are so deeply ingrained in society that the entire world would have to be rebuilt if they ever were to collapse. With real life looking like that, it's satisfying and cathartic to watch a show where evil is an imposition on normal, and where we can watch the main character kill and defeat evil with impunity because there is no human element to it. Where justice is simple and exciting instead of complicated and slow and boring. Additionally, there is a litany of shows that explore the minds of evil people. How they came to be that way, way, what their justification is, what their circumstances are, why they act the way they do, and so on. And while those shows are great, and I love that, I think that by forsaking the idea of exploring the nuances of evil, Frieren gives itself more time to explore the nuances of good, and that's something we don't get as often. I trust this story to be responsible. What I'm concerned about is not the meta-narrative of the demons, but the narrative of the demons. Frankly, I'm worried they're gonna get boring. So far, the major demons have all been portrayed in mostly the same way. They are arrogant, haughty, sadistic deceivers, and the major variation between them comes from whether they focus on arrogance, haughtiness, sadism, or deception. The 5 major demons we've seen so far have all been very cool, but I'm concerned about the series' ability to keep that up when the main antagonists are so limited in the kinds of personalities they can have. Assuming that Flamma and Frieren are telling the truth about what demons are, there's not much room for variation. As much as I love the Aura the Guillotine arc, I don't want all of Frieren's fights against demons to follow that same formula, and that's a big risk that the series takes when it decides to have such a rigidly defined group of antagonists. Truth be told, I'm not particularly worried about this, because Frieren has already proved itself capable of telling all kinds of stories, but there are so few things worth even nitpicking in Frieren that I'm having trouble writing this script, so I thought I'd mention it. And speaking of having trouble with writing, Hare ni hare hana yo sake saite haru no se Kuriyame wa mere sae anata wo kasaru haru. While Frieren rightfully gets praised by many a fool, one of the places where I feel us fools are overselling their satisfaction with the series is the writing. Not the overall writing, the plot structure, character development, etc. Those are all world class. I mean the dialogue. The actual words that are on screen. At first, I was willing to think this was just a dub issue. That perhaps everything sounded perfectly natural in Japanese and only turned into a stilted, awkward mess when it was contorted to fit into English Frieren's anglicized mouth, and that may be true. I don't speak Japanese. I don't have a Japanese cultural understanding of what makes good dialogue. But the English words used to describe the thoughts that are expressed by characters in Frieren are often not particularly good words. And the place where this is most apparent in the series is in the repetition of certain lackluster phrases. There are clearly no Irishmen on the writing staff of Frieren, because if there were, they would understand that there are so many phrases that you can use to describe a priest as corrupt, and that corrupt priest is one of the least interesting among them. I get that it's a joke slash catchphrase, but it is not a good one, and it isn't worth repeating anywhere near as often as they do. Shaking it up once with a miscreant of the cloth was refreshing, and I think the bit would have worked a lot better if they'd kept that same idea but used a different phrase every time. Call him the drunk of the diocese, or the vagabond vicar, or there's something here between holy roller and hangy over, and it's not quite coming to me, but you see what I'm getting at. Corrupt priest is just so straightforward. It hardly qualifies as a nickname, and yet this show repeats it like that weird white circle thing on my wall endlessly repeated its pointless nightly shrieks before I took the batteries out. Frieren scripts have a problem with repetition in general, and corrupt priest is far from the only culprit. Heiter was appalled. I do magic as a hobby. I like magic somewhat. All appear in different amounts. Some are less annoying and more natural than others, but the whole script could benefit from a loving stomp under the foot of Thesaurus Rex. But the bigger issue I have with corrupt priest and the rest of the dialogue is that it's not natural. That is not something that anyone would ever call another person, and that is a pervasive problem with Frieren. Every character in this series has moments where they talk like a robot, especially near the end of the episode when they're wrapping everything up and talking about what we learned about death and friendship or whatever. To be clear, this isn't Psycho-Pass or Code Geass, where you have high school dropouts quoting Nietzsche in the middle of a gunfight, but it is noticeable, especially during the flashbacks. The scene I'm about to show you is very common throughout the series, and is only slightly exaggerating the reality of the dialogue for comedic effect. Enjoy. Mistress Frieren, why do you slurp your spaghetti as one long noodle, leaving the meatballs and sauce on your plate to be eaten separately when the entirety of the pasta is resting in your gut? Why do you not twist the noodles on a fork and enjoy the full variety of Italian flavors at once without smearing your face with spittle? Yeah. Himmel, why do you slurp your spaghetti as one long noodle, leaving the meatballs and sauce on your plate to be eaten separately when the entirety of the pasta is resting in your gut? Why do you not twist the noodles on a fork and enjoy the full variety of Italian flavors at once without smearing your face with spittle? I guess it's because I feel bad for the noodles. Bad for them? Making pasta is a delicate art. Mixing the dough, pounding the lumps out, cutting it into fine noodles just the right width, and then cooking them to perfection. One person put their heart into these noodles, only to have them drowned in sauce and meat. When I eat the noodle by itself, I guess I want to appreciate their work. Appreciate their work? For as long as I live, I want to enjoy as much noodle as I can. Also, I love you. I guess I feel bad for the noodles. I want to appreciate their work. Appreciate their work? What are you talking about, Mistress Frieren? Also, I love you. Flashbacks in Frieren are not on the nose, they are on the entire face. The sentiment is good, but the execution is always just a little bit lacking. It feels like any time Fern, Frieren, Stark, and Stark's canonically small penis face a problem, whether that's an emotional problem or a dragon problem, Frieren can always think back to a time when her old, better friends faced the exact same problem using the exact same words. Himmel poses for statues and gives surprisingly meaningful advice. Heiter is drunk and cheerful, Eisen is a stoic weirdo. And when the flashback is over, Frieren has the answer she needs to solve the problem, make herself feel better, or mediate between the children. I think these flashbacks would be better if Frieren ever looked back at a scene as an example of what not to do. We see this a little bit when Himmel decides to spare the demon child, and there are consequences, but mostly we see the heroes' party as infallible. They were great friends with a perfect friendship, and they always had the best advice for any situation. It's one thing if Frieren is romanticizing these memories and intentionally leaving out the rough parts, but that's not the way this is being portrayed, and it would be nice to see a little bit of their struggle. I'm sure that Heiter and Himmel fought just as much as Fern and Stark's canonically small penis do, though for different reasons. I'm sure they made mistakes and had regrets. Show us some of that. Because at the moment, it feels like the heroes' party is just modern party, but better, and that makes it feel like they aren't real people. They are ideals of friendship who always have the answer and are never wrong, and every time they're on screen, I come away from it feeling like I've just watched an episode of VeggieTales, right down to the demons being bad. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood has been the highest rated anime on Mal for as long as I have had an account. It's not unusual to see it slip for a month or two when a hot new show comes out, like Attack on Titan or Kaguya-sama or Fruits Basket, but it always finds its way back. With an incredible 9.09 aggregate user rating and nearly 10 years of hype at its back, it's difficult to imagine a world where anything could even hope to compete to hold that crown. But magic is a realm of imagination, and the king is dead. Long live the queen. I've been in this game for a long time now. I've watched a lot of great shows, and I've watched a lot of terrible ones. Frieren is great. Not anime great. Lord of the Rings great. During the fight with Qual, Frieren remarks that his signature spell, Zoltrak, was so groundbreaking and influential that all of humanity's understanding of magic had to be rewritten with it in mind. Now, it is so pervasive that it is known as ordinary offensive magic. This is Frieren. For decades from now, every fantasy series that comes out of Japan or the entire world will have Frieren written into its bones. They will learn from Frieren, they will build on Frieren, they will answer Frieren. And when they try to ignore Frieren, Frieren will be echoing in the minds of viewers as they watch it. Fern lives in a world where Zoltrak has always been. To her, it is the foundation of everything, as immutable as the air she breathes. It is ordinary offensive magic, an introductory chapter in a textbook not worth remarking on by anyone who has any understanding of the craft. And someday, Frieren will be seen the same way. It will have done so much, and become so integral to the kind of story it is, that it will have become passé. It will have achieved the highest honor that a work can achieve. It will have been copied, imitated, and iterated upon so much that it becomes bland. A chapter in a book on the history of fantasy. But there was a time when Zoltrak was new, when it was frightening and miraculous and grand, and nobody knew what was going to come of it. And we are lucky to live in that time. If you enjoyed Frieren, and you did, here are some other series that you might want to check out. Whether that's for the quiet fantasy vibes or the awesome wizard fights. I would say them by name, but I don't know what they are yet. I'm gonna decide while I'm editing. This one in particular is really good. I sure do love this one. If you enjoyed this video and you want to have a say on what the next one is about, you can go to patreon.com/explanationpoint, where all of my patrons of all tiers are able to vote on my next video topic. The options for this poll are Apothecary Diaries, Undead Unluck, Shangri-La Frontier, and Yubisaki and Renren. So if you have a strong opinion on which one of those you would like to see a video about, go and vote, and if not, then don't. A huge thank you to all my patrons as always, especially today's lucky patron, Vincent, who has been a patron at the $1 tier for 8 days. You really are lucky. Welcome to the cult, and I hope you enjoy your stay, however long or short it may be. If any of you want to join this list of hungry people? If any of you want to join this list of lovely people who help me pay my medical bills now that I don't have insurance anymore, and I cannot stress that enough, you can go to patreon.com/explanationpoint to join our Discord server, our weekly game hangouts, our monthly anime club discussions, read my notes and scripts early, get early access to videos sometimes, have me critique your stuff, vote in our video topics, and get weekly progress reports, and so on and so on and so on. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, this has been Explanation Point, whispering a lullaby for you to come back home. Boom,